Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Tanya class. We are now in the middle of chapter 19. We're on page 79. Up till this point, Alter Rebbe explained, I'll do a quick synopsis. Alter Rebbe explained that the neshama of a yid is compared to a candle, just like a candle flickers and is in a constant upward move, and by nature it seeks to depart and extinguish and leave the wick and be included and absorbed in the source of fire, its source, even though that means that it will no longer exist. Is that playing? Press the red button.
Yeah, I didn't know.
It's at 1 minute and 50 seconds,
Yeah.
so I think you're good.
Yeah.
Even though that means that it will totally lose its independent existence as a fire, but that's what it seeks. It doesn't have a rationale behind it. That's just the nature of it. The same thing, the candle of God, which is the neshama, also seeks to separate and is in a constant movement upward to be included in its source, which is in God, which is in Hashem Himself. Even though, again, that means that it will lose its independent existence entirely. But nevertheless, that's what it wants. That's by nature what it wants. To totally be bottled to Hashem, to completely nullify its existence in the larger existence or in the infinite existence of Hashem. Although that goes against the rationale of its own existence, because it loses its existence, but that's its nature. And this is true with the entire side of holiness. Holiness is defined by separateness. Someone that is holy is someone that is separate. And that's because the epitome of holiness is Hashem Himself. The ultimate holy existence is Hashem's existence, because it's for real, totally removed from all existence, from anything from our existence and from all even spiritual existence. And therefore, anything that is connected in one with Hashem is holy, because it's one with that separateness. It becomes absorbed in Hashem's separateness. In other words, anything that feels its own independent existence is not holy, is not connected to Hashem, because Hashem is only present where there is bittul, where there is total nullification of self. The minute you feel yourself as an independent existence, you've kind of chased away Hashem from the equation. So if you want to be holy, you have to be bottled, you have to be nullified in Hashem's existence. Now, holy doesn't necessarily mean that you run away from the physical world. Holy means that you connect the physical world to this holiness, to godliness. That means you utilize your food for a godly purpose, you utilize your possessions for a godly purpose, and so on and so forth. The minute you use your food, your possessions, and everything else in your life for your own selfish existence, self-centered existence, you're separated, you're not bottled, and therefore you're not holy, you're not part of the holy side. You're part of the other side, which is the klipa, which is the shell, which is the unholy side. And that's why the wicked are called dead. The wicked are called dead because the source of life is God. The wicked are separated from God, and therefore they're considered lifeless, even though they are in this world. Got a cup of water. This is where we got to last week. This week we are holding on page 79, and it is by the on the right column, about 11 lines from the bottom. It's actually 10 lines from the bottom. The line begins die, without wisdom. At the number 8, that's what we're holding. Clear? You with me? Okay. She said, let's read from a few lines above that, from the word this, which is about 16, 17 lines from the bottom, or 10 lines from the top, the end of the brackets, right? This stands in direct. You see it? Yeah. This stands in direct contrast to the so-called Klipa and Sitra Achra, wherefrom are derived the souls of the Gentiles who work for themselves alone, demanding, give, and feed me. It's self-centered, in order to become independent beings and entities, as mentioned above, in direct contrast to the category of Chochmah. Therefore, they are called dead, for wisdom, Chochmah, gives life. As it is also written, they die without wisdom. So wisdom is associated with the infinite light of Hashem, which is Kedusha, which is holiness. When you're independent, you're self-centered, you're separated from Chochmah, and therefore you're separated from life, and therefore you're called dead. Now I should mention, thank you. I should mention that when he says over here that the nations of the world, the Gentiles, the soul of the Jewish people, there's two souls we talked about, right? One soul comes from Klipa, and one soul comes from Hashem, from Chochmah Atzilus, from Chochmah Atzilus. Correct? You remember that. The soul of the Jew that comes from Klipa is also Klipa. It's just that we have the ability to do good as well with that soul as well, because that soul comes from Klipas Noiga, as he mentioned in the first chapter. There's two types of Klipa. There's the totally unclean Klipas, and then there's the neutral Klipa. A Klipa that is totally unholy, so you can't transform it into holy. Something that comes from that realm, you can't transform into holy. For example, a piece of pork. A Jew cannot eat the piece of pork with the intention to serve God better through the strength that he will get from that piece of pork, from that meal.
What about a bastard? A bastard child?
Yeah, true, also.
Cannot be transformed.
That's a good question. That means that doesn't mean that the bastard can't do good things.
Absolutely.
He can connect to Hashem, yeah. The act that brought him into the world was horrible. But that's a very interesting topic. It's not for now. So you cannot transform those entities, because they come from the three unclean klippas altogether, and they are tied to the realm of unholiness. It cannot be transformed. Then there's a translucent klippa, or as we call it, a natural klippa, like the table, the paper, the cup, all the physical world. That is not unholy, that is not sinful. That comes from the klippa. It comes from klippa, it's a shell, comes from the shell, or the concealment, that level that conceals godliness, because when you look at this table, it's concealing this godly spark that's in it, that creates it. So in that sense it's klippa, but it's from the neutral klippa that could be transformed into holiness. You use this table for a good purpose, for a holy purpose, to learn chassidus on it, to give a Tanya class, or a Chumash class, or a Talmud class. You've taken this table and elevated it and connected to Kedusha, to the holiness of Hashem. So that klippa, you can have, godliness can shine through it. That's why I call it translucent klippa. It allows for godliness and holiness to shine through. Then you have the realm of holiness. The realm of holiness is where the soul of the Jewish people come from. They're uniquely Jewish soul. So the klippa is about independent existence. Klippa wants to be. Is not interested in holiness, not interested in bittul, in nullifying itself in the reality of God. It's interested in its own self-preservation, its own enhancement, and so on. So he says, any people that come from Klipa, their natural disposition, and not necessarily bad or good, it's just a natural reality, is that they're going to be self-centered, not in a negative way, it's all about me and I don't want to do any good for anyone else. No, but even the good that they do is probably has a touch of self-centeredness. I want to be a good person. I want to get reward. Even that is a touch of self.
So the purpose is them.
Yeah, at the end of it, it's very hard to be completely altruistic where there's no self-centered motive at all. Very seldom you can find an act that is not self-centered at all. So that's what he's saying over here. He brings two verses. One's give me, and feed me. In order to become independent beings and entities, as mentioned above, in direct contrast to the category of Chochmah, which is bittul. That's just the nature of the way God created the world, that existence wants to exist. That's the truth with every single existence, except the fire. Except the flame. The flame wants to stop existing. And that's the same with the neshama, the uniquely holy soul, which we have, which also doesn't want to have independent existence at all. It looks to seek oneness with Hashem, or even to lose its existence and be absorbed in the other in the new existence, Hashem's reality. So, and therefore, the wicked are called evil, are called wicked. The wicked are called dead, because they lack the life of Chochmah. All life comes from Chochmah. And since they're not connected to Chochmah, because Chochmah necessitates or requires bittul, and they don't have bittul, they don't have this self-nullification, that self-humility or nullification of self, so they lack the life of Chochmah, and therefore they're called dead. Now he continues, so are the wicked and transgressors of Israel. The same is true with every Jew who's wicked, who sins. He's also called dead. He or she is also called dead. But that's only before they face the test to sanctify God's name. A Jew, on a regular day, that conducts him or herself in a way that's contrary to God's will, is also in the same category of a sinful person, and therefore is not connected to Chochmah, not holy, and therefore lifeless, death. It's spiritual death. But that's only till it is faced with the test of faith. We'll see soon what happens when a Jew is put to the corner and he's forced to make the ultimate choice between life and to worship and to deny God completely, which we'll discuss soon. But before that moment, he too and she too can succumb to sin, and therefore be considered dead spiritually. Why? See, it says, for the faculty of Chochmah, which is in the divine soul, with a spark of godliness from the light of the blessed Ein Sof that is clothed in it, in that Chochmah of your soul, is as it were an exile in their body within the animal soul, coming from the klipa, in the left part of the heart, which reigns and holds sway over their body, in accordance with the esoteric doctrine of the exile of the Shekhinah, as mentioned earlier. What he's saying over here is, we have two neshamas, two souls, right? The godly soul that comes from Chochmah and has within it the Chochmah level, in which there is the light of the godly, the infinite light of Hashem. And because of that, we have the ability to totally nullify our existence to that infinite light of Hashem. But we also have another soul. We have the animal soul, or as we call it, the human soul. The nefesh abahamit. What is that human soul? That soul is what encloses itself in the body to make it a living body, not dead. The difference between a living body and someone that died and is buried in the ground is the person that is alive has the human soul animating the body and giving it life. In addition to that soul, we also have the neshama, the godly soul. But what happens is the human soul with the body sometimes take control and exile the godly soul within them. Sometimes the animal soul, the human animal soul, as we call it, the human soul holds sway over the body, and therefore the godly soul, which is also in the body, is in exile over there, is exiled in the body. So it doesn't mean that when you sin, you don't have your neshama. You have your neshama, and that neshama has chokhmah. And in that chokhmah is the Eir Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem. It's just that it's in exile. And you know what happens when someone's in exile? It's like a person is in prison. You could have the prince itself in prison. Lock up the prince in prison. Could he behave as a prince? Hardly. He can't do what he wants. He's under the control of alien forces. So the neshama is under the control of an alien force, which is the animal soul, the self-centered soul that takes control over it. That's what exile means. It's in the control of someone else, because the animalistic soul, by these sinful Jews, has taken sway over them. Let's read this again. On page 79. So are the wicked, by 8, that will number 10 lines from the bottom. So are the wicked and transgressors of Israel, before they face the test to sanctify God's name. This is all before they face the test of sanctifying God's name. Before that, they can sin, they can fall into sin. For the faculty of Chokhmah, which is in the divine soul, with a spark of godliness from the light of the blessed infinite light of God that is clothed in it, is as it were in exile in their body within the animal soul coming from the Klippa. The animal soul comes from Klippa, from the other side, not the holy side. Where is it? In the left part of the heart, as we learned already in chapter 9, which reigns and holds sway over their body, in accordance with the esoteric doctrine of the exile of the Shekhinah. We talk about the exile being the Shekhinah means God. He's in exile. What does it mean that God's in exile? It means the neshama of our neshama, which is a part of Hashem, is in exile in our body and under the control of the animalistic side, animalistic soul. For this reason, he continues, this love of the divine soul, whose desire and wishes to unite with God. We said before in the beginning of the chapter, or chapter 9, 19 and 18, that the godly soul has a hidden love. Every one of us has a hidden love for Hashem. The natural love that we have for Hashem, that comes from the neshama, right? But since the neshama is in exile, it's under the control of other alien forces within us. So therefore he says, for this reason, this love of the divine soul, whose desire is and wishes to unite with God, and the blessed fountainhead of all life, is called the hidden love. That's why it's called the hidden love, because it's in hiding. It's not revealed. It's in exile, for it is hidden and veiled in the case of the transgressors of Israel, in the sackcloth of the Klippa, whence there enters into them a spirit of folly to sin. As the rabbis have said, a person does not sin unless a spirit of folly has entered into him. Because how silly is it to sin? It's folly. It's death. So that happens because the neshama is veiled by the klipa, and from there comes the spirit of folly to get us to do things that are contrary to our own real will. Our own real will is to be one with Hashem, like the neshama wants, but we allow the God, the animal soul, to take sway over us to get us to do things that are detrimental to us, and that's what makes it. Why it's considered folly. So that's all on a regular day. It can happen that we should sin because the godly soul within us is in exile, and therefore it's the love that it has is called hidden love. Ava misuteret. However, now comes the important point here. The question now is going to be, the question he's going to address now is an interesting, good question. If you're telling me that the animalistic soul that comes from Klippa takes control of you, right? And therefore the godly soul with its chokhmah and all that is in exile, right? But the Alter Rebbe said before in chapter 18 that even the sinners of Israel have the power to sacrifice their life for Hashem. when it comes to the ultimate test of faith. They'll even give up their life for Hashem. So the question is, where does that come from? From Chochmah, right? From the Neshama's element of Chochmah, in which there's the godly spark of the infinite light of Hashem, right? And because of that, we have the power to totally lose our existence in Hashem. And therefore we have the ability to martyr ourselves for our faith. So the Alter Rebbe is going to question, how could that happen? If you're telling me that the Chochmah of the Nefesh is in exile, certainly the animal soul doesn't want. Why does the animal soul, why does the person sin? Why does this person not put on tefillin or eat not kosher or do things that he shouldn't do? Because we said, because the animal soul is in control, and it wants to have that delicious piece of food that's not kosher, and it doesn't want to get up in the morning and daven. And even though the neshama wants to do that, but it's under the control, it's in golus, it's in exile, in the hands, in the force, in the domain of the animal soul that's in our body, right? And the animal soul doesn't want to put on tefillin. The animal soul doesn't want to keep kosher. Does the animal soul want to martyr itself for God?
Absolutely.
Absolutely not. So why, when it comes to tefillin and kosher, the animal soul gets its way? But when it comes to martyrdom, no, over there suddenly the animal soul lost its control. How did that happen? The animal soul is in control or not? By the sinners I'm talking about. How does it happen that suddenly, when it comes to the test of faith, the animal soul shut down its poor force, it steps aside, and lets the neshama take over? How does that work? The neshama is in exile under the domain of the animal soul. Why all of a sudden is it allowing the Jew to give up his life for Hashem? That's the question he's going to address now. Again, we said that the godly soul is in exile. If it's in exile, it's in exile. Why all of a sudden, when it's faced with a test of faith, it suddenly gets out of exile? The neshama, the animal soul, is not strong enough. It lets it loose. What happened over here? You understand the question? So here's the answer. However, this exile of the faculty of Chochmah, it's important stuff what we're going to read here now. However, this exile of the faculty of Chochmah refers only to that aspect of it that which is diffused throughout the nefesh and animates it. Explains as follows. This chokhmah shebenefesh, that level, that highest level of the soul, is not just remains in the highest level in chokhmah and has no influence on the rest of the body. That level spreads itself, its light, its influence affects all the aspects of the neshama, of the soul, of the human experience. So it's like, just for lack of a better example, let's say the flashlight, you take a flashlight, right? So you have a bulb. The bulb is here, right? How is it light 10 feet away? Because the light, there's a ray of the light that spreads 10 feet or even more, right? Let's say the sun and its ray. It's spreading to millions and millions and hundreds, 100 million miles further, right? The ball of the sun is way up there, but the ray of the sun is influenced. Chochmah shebenefesh is also like a tremendous spiritual light bulb. The chochmah shebenefesh is in the brain, but its influence, its ray, its influence, it has influence. It extends, its light extends to the whole body, to influence our emotions, to influence our actions, to influence everything. That extension of chochmah is in exile. That's why it's not influencing your emotions. It's letting you love tray food. That's why your heart is not responding to the dictates of chochmah. Chochmah shebenefesh wants you to love Hashem. Chochmah shebenefesh wants you to act in the way that Hashem wants. So why is it that you're not acting the way Hashem wants, according to the dictates of chochmah? Because the extension of chochmah, that aspect of chochmah that extends throughout the body into your other faculties and body limbs, is in exile. But chochmah shebenefesh itself is not in exile. That never went under the dominion of the animal soul. That's not in exile. The Alter Rebbe is going to say that's just sleeping. That's not an exile. No one has control over it. It's asleep. It just has to wake up. And what's the difference between exile and sleep? When you're in exile, you can be up and you can't do anything because the people that have you control over you don't let you act. Like the prince, the son of the king. Yeah, if you put him in a jail or you put him he was captured by enemies of the king. He can be up and alive and he can't act as the son of the king. He's in exile. But what happens if the son of the king is in his palace, the father's palace? He's just sleeping. He's in exile. He's not in exile. He's just asleep. Wake him up and he'll be the son. He'll act like a son. He'll act like a king's prince. So he says, the extension of Chochmah of Nefesh, that which animates the rest of the body and the faculties, that's an exile under the under the dominion of the animal soul. And that's why the animal soul doesn't let the Jew do what it has to, even though it would like to. Because it's stronger, for whatever reason, by the sinners. It's an exile, period. It's captured. It captured the neshama. Not the neshama, not the chochmah itself. It captured the extension of the neshama. That part of the neshama that extends to the rest of the faculties and the body, that's under the dominion or the control of the animal soul. And that's why this person will end up sinning. But chochmah shebenefesh itself, the spark of godliness that's in chochmah shebenefesh, that's not an exile. That can never go into exile. God can never be in anyone's exile. That's the king himself. That's God himself. That's not an exile. Let's see it in the Alter Rebbe's words. However, we're on page 81 by the circle. However, this exile of the faculty of Chochmah refers only to that aspect of it which is diffused throughout the nefesh and animates it. Yet the root and core of this faculty of the divine soul remains in the brain and does not clothe itself in the sackcloth of the klipa, in the left part of the heart, in veritable exile, but it is, as it were, dormant, sleepy, it's asleep, in the case of the wicked, not exercising its influence in them so long as their knowledge and understanding are preoccupied with mundane pleasures. What happens is when you get involved in your mundane life, and that becomes your preoccupation, it's put to sleep. It's not put in exile. The essence of the neshama is not put in exile. It's just sleeping. It's not under anyone's domain. That can't be under anyone's domain. Nevertheless, when they are confronted with the test in the matter of faith, which transcends knowledge, touching the very soul and the faculty of Chochmah within it, at such time it is aroused from its sleep, and it exerts its influence by virtue of the divine force that is clothed in it, as it is written. Then the Lord awaked, and one out of a sleep. Let me explain what's happening there. When does this spark, this Chochmah Shebenefesh wake up? It's asleep, right? By the sinful people, it's asleep. Because they're busy with all the other narishkeit, with things that are mundane and their own self-centered pursuits. So the neshama is asleep, so that's why they can sin. It can happen that they'll sin. Because the parts that extend from the nefesh are in exile. The nefesh itself, the chochmah shebenefesh itself, is sleeping. So everything is like, not able to influence the person. But when you wake it up, how does this soul wake up? When you touch the core essence of the soul, that wakes up. Then it wakes up. Let me give you an example. You ever have a son, like a teenager, that likes to sleep till 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? You know what I'm talking about. When you wake it up at 8 o'clock in the morning, you say, get up and do something productive. It looks at you, it wakes up, it goes back to sleep. Or sometimes it doesn't even wake up. It goes back to sleep. You'll ask it when it finally wakes up at 4 in the afternoon and comes out of his bedroom. You say, you wasted a day. You're ruining your life. You're just wasting this day. I'll get to life tomorrow. Right? One day I sleep, not the end of the world. A week, a year, nicht gefällig. I still have 119 years. Right? But if that boy is sleeping, and suddenly a fire breaks out in the house, and his very life is on the line, not his productivity, which is important, but his very life is on the line. He will jump out of bed in an instant, fly out of the house as if he was up for 3 hours already. He'll have the energy like you never saw. He'll have unbelievable amount of energy suddenly. Because his very life is on the line. There's no more when you're telling him get up and do something productive. So he says, I'll sleep. It's not the end of the world. My life is not in danger. If I waste a day, my life is not in danger. I can waste a day, nothing will happen. I can waste a year, a decade. I have another 11 decades. Nicht gefährlich. But when there's a fire burning and he's inside and he has to get out, there's no over there. Suddenly he wakes up and he's animated. His toes are flying, not just his head and his hand. He's full of animation. He's full of energy. He's running out of the house in an instant. It doesn't take more than a second to get him flying. This is the truth with the neshama as well. It's a reflection of the neshama. What happens? The neshama, the sinful among us, put the neshama to sleep. What? So when you're going through a non-kosher restaurant, and it smells delicious, and you're invited for a lunch meeting at a non-kosher restaurant with a business associate, with a customer, and you're really not in the mood of telling them I have to drive 15 minutes further to go to a kosher restaurant, you may lose the customer. So you go to the non-kosher restaurant. You may even know that it's not kosher. It's like the boy that knows that if I'm not productive today, it's not good. He knows that it's not good to sleep away a day or a year or a month, a week. But it's not affecting my life. He's really stupid. It is affecting his life. It's a foolish attitude that affects his life badly. But a spirit of folly enters him and says, my life is not ruined. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. We all know that's how we treat these things. So when a Jew is confronted with the mitzvah, an individual mitzvah of kosher, Shabbos, whatever other mitzvah, he may say to himself, this is not the end of my life. I can keep my mind, Chachma can remain asleep. It's not going to die. It's not going to die. I'm still a good Jew. I'm still Jewish. I eat shellfish and pork. I'm still Jewish. Go ask any Jew that doesn't keep kosher. Do they think that this makes them not Jewish anymore? They'll not. They'll laugh at you. Say, what do you mean? I'm still Jewish. Of course I'm Jewish. This is a spirit of folly that makes them think that this is okay. But imagine you come now and there's a fire burning in the house. The example that the Alter Rebbe gives for the fire burning in the house that wakes up the person, the Chachma Shebenefesh, is a test of faith. When you tell the Jew you're going to die, you have to bow to an idol. You have to give up your faith in God. Over here, it's like a fire burning. He realizes, but this, I lost my connection to Judaism. And a Jew is incapable of doing that. Why is he incapable of doing it? Because Chachma Shebenefesh won't let. In other words, what is Chachma Shebenefesh? Chachma Shebenefesh, that core essence of the soul, where the infinite light of God shines in you, that's where our faith comes from. The Rebbe explained this in chapter 18, that faith comes from Chachma Shebenefesh. It's not something. It's not rational. It's something we experience. This is who our very essence is godliness. We can't deny it. So as long as you're challenging my Shabbos, you're challenging my kosher, you're even challenging perhaps my Yom Kippur, the Chachma can keep sleeping. But when your very Chachma Shebenefesh is tickled, how do you tickle Chachma? Yom Kippur is not tickling the Chachma Shebenefesh. Kosher is not necessarily because your spirit of folly can talk you in that your Chachma Shebenefesh is still okay. But when it's a question of giving up your faith, denying your Chachma Shebenefesh completely, that Chachma Shebenefesh is your faith. That's where your faith comes from. If an enemy of the Jews comes and tells you you have to give up your faith, the Chachma Shebenefesh can't tolerate that. You're ripping me. You're getting into me myself. That's where my faith comes from. That's what my whole essence is my faith in God. That's what Chacham Shebenefesh is. It won't let it. It'll wake up. And you know what happens when the Chacham Shebenefesh wakes up? Like that kid that wakes up when there's a fire burning. It's not only his head wakes up. His whole existence wakes up. His whole entire 360, all his sinews, all his limbs and all his organs, everything becomes animated to go and save his life. His toes are awoken. His nails of his toes are awakened. Everything is moving now to go save your life. When a Yid is challenged, his Chochmah Shebenefesh is challenged, he won't even... So not only he'll go to his death in order not to deny his Chochmah Shebenefesh, because that's spiritual death. A Jew is not capable of dying spiritually completely. That's his essence. At those moments, even the rest of his body wakes up, meaning the rest of his soul wakes up, and he won't miss tefillin at those moments either. At that moment, when his Chochmah Shebenefesh wakes up, it spreads throughout the whole body, and everything gets going. He starts learning. He hates anything that's evil, and he despises anything that's against God. He'll look at a piece of pork and he'll want to throw up, because his Chochmah woke up.
Does that happen to everybody?
When you put them to the ultimate test of faith. Now, I told you that in the history of the Jewish people, there were people that have chosen to bow to the idol rather than, like in the time of the Inquisition, they gave the Jewish people the choice. You die or you become a Christian. Right? You remember that, the whole story of the Inquisition. And a lot of Jews chose to become Christians. So there's no question that it can happen that even at the end of the day, our freedom of choice has never been taken away from us. As I mentioned to you, you have to be aware that you have a nefesh, that you have a neshama. A person is not even aware that he has a neshama. If I gave you the example of a child that was being separated from his mother and father at birth, and he grew up not knowing who they are. So he doesn't even see that. Does he love his mother and father, who he had no idea who they are? He can hardly, he doesn't know who they are. Imagine when he's 25 years old, a full adult, happens to be sitting on a park bench, and near him sits down his birth mother, unbeknownst to either of them. But you do know it. And you see the mother not kissing her son, and the son not kissing his mother. And you wonder, wait a minute, this is a father and son. They haven't seen each other for 25 years. How could they not embrace each other? The answer is a simple one. They don't know. They're not aware that this is his mother and this is the son. Just tell them, this happens to be your son. This is your mother. Watch what happens. So it's possible that a lot of Jews are unaware that they have a neshama. They don't know their father. They don't know their father in heaven. They're not aware that they have a neshama. So of course you have to be aware that you have a neshama. Watch the mother. She's not aware that this is her son, and she's not going to give her life for this child, this 25-year-old. She has no idea that's her son. But if you tell her, this is your son, and you prove it, and she's no doubt about it, you watch what happens. Someone comes over to the son and holds him up. She'll jump in front to take the bullet. Why would she jump? 5 minutes ago, she wasn't ready to do anything for this guy. He was a stranger. She didn't know. Now it's my mother. I can't let him die instead of me. I'm going to take the bullet. It's the same thing with a Jew. If he doesn't even know that he has a neshama, he doesn't know that he's a child of Hashem, so of course he's not going to give up his life for it. Or why should he? He has no idea. It means nothing to him. Teach him about the neshama. Once he becomes aware that he has a neshama, the story with Yosel the Ganav that I keep coming back to, he knew he had a neshama. And therefore, even if he was a Ganav, he was a thief, on the regular day, his neshama was, that part of the neshama that spreads throughout the body was in exile by him. And his Chochmah Shebenefesh was asleep, and that's why he was able to steal and do all kinds of terrible things. But when the Christians gave him, that priest gave him the ultimate choice, you can save yourself. He was caught stealing from the church. Remember the story I told you. And he was given the ultimate choice. You can, if you want to save your life, become a Christian. And he said, no way. And he jumped into the fire in public square in the town. He wasn't an idealistic Jew. He was a stealer. He was a thief. He wasn't living Torah and mitzvahs. That wasn't his idealism. Hardly. But his Chachma Shebenefesh was touched, was threatened. And when that happened, at that moment, stealing became abhorrent to him. When he was, at that moment, when his neshama woke up, and that's what's not in exile. The nefesh of Bahamis, the animal soul, doesn't have control over that essence. It's just asleep. When you sleep, you're not under anyone's control. You're just not aware. Become aware, and you'll be able to act like the son of a king. But when that happens, even the extensions of the neshama are also woken up. And at that moment, he'll never miss tefillah. He'll be very passionate about every mitzvah. Let's see it in the Alter Rebbe's words. Let's do from that circle again, on page 81. However, this exile of the faculty of Chochmah refers only to that aspect of it which is diffused throughout the nefesh and animates. That can be an exile, because the animal soul is also present in those areas, and it takes sway over it. So it exiles the neshama's extension. Yet the root and core of this faculty of the divine soul remains in the brain and does not clothe itself in the sackcloth of klipa in the left part of the heart. It's inveritable exile, but it is as it were dormant, asleep in the case of the wicked, not exercising its influence in them so long as their knowledge and understanding are preoccupied with mundane pleasures. Nevertheless, so when you're involved with your daily life and you're in pursuits of unholy, whatever, just regular life, so your neshama could be asleep. And you can end up sinning even. Nevertheless, when they are confronted with a test in the matter of faith, which transcends knowledge, touching the very soul, and the faculty of Chochmah within it, the very faith of the soul, which is the Chochmah of the soul, so that was touched and that was tickled. At such time it is aroused from its sleep, and it exerts its influence. It exerts its influence by virtue of the divine force that is clothed in it. As is written, then the Lord awaked, as one out of sleep. Then the neshama wakes up, and it exerts its influence. What's the influence of the Chachma Shebenefesh? Total bittul. Total readiness for self-sacrifice, to become one with Hashem, even if it means giving up my own life. Because that's the nature of the neshama when it's up. On such occasion, the sinner is inspired to withstand the test of faith in God without any reasoning. This is not a situation where he's now going to sit down and have a whole calculation in his brain. Should I do it? Is it worth for me to give up my life? Is it not worth for me to? That calculation doesn't take place. He's not having those thoughts. It's a matter of beyond reason. It's the neshama itself. A mother thinks, should I give up my life? Is it worth for me to take the bullet for my son? She has such a calculation. A father has such a calculation when his son is burning, or the son is threatened, the son's very life is threatened. He's going to sit down. Let's have a thought. Let's think this through. Should I go in and save my son? But I might die on the way.
He's our nation.
Or should I take the bullet? I may die. Why should I die? Maybe I have a more important life than my son. Is it worth? Whose life is more valuable? This is silly. That doesn't happen.
So that's the hidden love for God.
That's the hidden love, but it's no longer hidden. When you wake it up, it's no longer hidden. And then your natural instinct just jumps up and acts. The natural instinct of neshama is incapable of separating from God at that level. To deny its very connection to God, it can't. So therefore, when it comes to a matter of faith, it's never going to let it. It's not going to let the Jew sin and then deny his faith. Here. On such occasion, the sinner is inspired to withstand the test of faith in God without any reasoning or knowledge or intelligence that may be comprehended by him. It's not something he understands the value of giving up your life. It's not a rational decision. And to prevail over the klipa and temptations of this world. It wakes up the person to overcome all the temptations of this world. whether permitted or prohibited, to which he can be accustomed, even to despise them. As I said, when the Chochmah Nefesh wakes up, all parts of it wakes up, and it extends, it influences the whole entire faculties of the soul. So now it's not even going to allow the neshama to sin, even the minor sins. When Chochmah Nefesh is awake and alive, the whole body, the whole existence of the person wakes up and is no longer capable of sinning in any sin. Let's read it again. On such occasion, the sinner is inspired to withstand the test of faith in God without any reasoning or knowledge or intelligence that may be comprehended by him, and to prevail over the klipa and temptations of this world, whether permitted or prohibited, to which he has been accustomed even to despise them, and to choose God as his portion and lot, yielding to him his soul to suffer martyrdom in order to sanctify his name. For even though the klipas had prevailed over him all his life, he didn't keep kosher, he didn't daven, he didn't do the mitzvahs, and he was prevailed, and he was impotent against them, because, as I said, that part of his neshama was in exile, so he was impotent against that klipa, the animal soul, as the rabbis have said, that the wicked are under the control of their heart, meaning the left side of the heart where the animal soul is. Yet, when he faces a test challenging his faith in the one God, a faith which has its root in the uppermost heights of holiness, namely the faculty of Chochmah of the divine soul, in which is clothed the light of the blessed infinite God, Ein Sof, then all the klipas are made null and void, and they vanish as though they had never been in the presence of the Lord. So it is, and he gives 3 proofs for this, 3 verses that he quotes. So it is written, and this is in Isaiah, and for lo thine enemies, O Lord, for lo thine enemies shall perish. This is talking about when Mashiach comes. All spirit of unholiness will perish, will be gone. The klipas will be completely gone. And the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. So there will become a time. So it's possible, so within our own life, when the Chochmah Nefesh, what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Why is all the spirit of negativity, all evil going to be dispersed? Because there will be a great revelation of God's infinite light. In our neshama, that infinite light is present. Therefore, when it's up, when it's revealed in us, the klipa gets chased out of our whole existence. And he brings another verse. And the workers of iniquity are scattered. And again, as wax melteth before fire, so shall the wicked perish. Because when the fire is burning, meaning the Chochmah Nefesh is on, it melts, and that's it, it's gone. And the 3rd verse, the hills melted like wax. He says now another point. You want to finish the chapter? You have
Yes.
another 5 minutes? Okay. The Alter Rebbe is going to address now an interesting thing. Let's say you're in the Inquisition. The Christian comes to you and says, if you don't convert and leave Judaism and you don't take on Christianity, we're going to kill you or kick you out or whatever. Mostly kill you. Why doesn't it make sense for the person to say, well, I'll be a closet Jew and I'll bow to the idol because I don't really believe in it. I'll bow to the idol just to make him think that I believe in it. But I really, in my heart, I don't believe in it. So he's not really denying his faith. What do we say till now? Chochmah Nefesh wakes up when it's forced to deny the faith. Is it forced to deny the faith just because you made an outward bow to an idol means you gave up your faith? You still believe inside in the one God. You're doing it because someone is putting a gun to your head. But it doesn't reflect your real inner self, your true identity. My true identity is totally loyal to God. In fact, in my behind closed doors, I'm going to light the Hanukkah candles, the Shabbos candles, keep Shabbos, do everything like a Jew. It's only an external act, so to say. It's not even reflecting the truth. So why should I give up my life? That's the question. This Yossel the Ganev. If he would have told the priest, okay, I'll convert to Christianity, he would have really, inside he would have believed in Christianity. Of course not. He's just doing it to tell the guy, bug off. It's just to get him to leave him alone. Why would he give up his life for he gave up his life not to even show an external acceptance of another faith. And that's what Alter Rebbe is going to address over here. Even that a Yid is not capable of doing. Even an external act that doesn't reflect the internal reality, even that a Yid is not capable of doing. And he'll give up his life instead of doing that. Let's see it in his words. The force of the divine light of the blessed Ein Sof that is clothed in the soul's Chochmah is great and powerful enough to banish and repel the Sitra Achra, the other side, meaning the unholy side of the animalistic soul and the Klippas, so that they could not even touch its garments, namely the thought, speech, and act of faith in the one God. The Chochmah Shebenefesh is so strong when it wakes up, it influences and banishes, what's the words he says? To banish and it repels the Sitra Achra and banishes it, the other side, the unholiness of the that got hold of him on a regular day, right? That we said from the animalistic soul, so that they could not even touch its garments. You can't even, like if they tell you, say that you believe in an idol. The Chachma Shebenefesh is so powerful that it doesn't even let the unholiness enclose itself in the mere external garments of the Jew. To just say something. Hi, good morning. 5 minutes. You understand what he's saying over here? What happens is when the Chachma Shebenefesh wakes up and shines in the Jew, it doesn't let, you can argue, you know what, the Chachma Shebenefesh is strong enough to get the Jew not to admit anything that's anti-God. And the Klippa can never get him to agree that there's something other than God. Because that's what Chachma is. It's his recognition of God and nothing else. But is it so strong to make sure that the animal soul, the Klippas, shouldn't even enclose themselves in the external words and actions of the Jew? Where he just bows as an external thing. He says, no, it doesn't let the Klippa get into the Jew at all. Even to the garments of the Jew, which are his actions, his words. He's incapable of even doing it as an external act. Let's see what he says here. So that they could not even touch its garments, namely the thought, speech, and act of faith in the one God. In other words, it enables one to withstand a test of self-sacrifice to the extent of even refusing to do some single act that is contrary to the faith in the one God, such as, for example, to bow to an idol even without acknowledging it in his heart at all, or to utter a false notion, heaven forbid, regarding the unity of God, to say that you believe in two gods. A Jew is not capable of doing that. When Chachma Shebenefesh is awoken, he doesn't let the Klippa get into even your external action, in your external garments. Be it merely by way of rendering lip service alone. It's just lip service. While his heart remains perfect in his belief in God. This is called fear. You remember in the question in the beginning of chapter 18, the Alter Rebbe asked 4 questions. Where does this hidden love come from? What's its content? What's its source? And the 4th question is, how is fear included in it? Because this hidden love causes a Yid not only to love Hashem, but also to fear God. And the question is, what's the connection between love and fear? How is fear included in this love? This is where the answer is. What he's going to say is, a Yid, when his love for Hashem is awakened through Chachma Shebenefesh, he's incapable of even saying something that denies God, even if he doesn't mean it. He's afraid to disconnect from God, even as an external, what's it called? An external act. That's what he's saying over here. This is called fear that is contained in love. The natural love of the divine soul that is found in all Jews, the intrinsic desire and will of which is to be attached to its origin and source in the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which shines in his Chachma of Nefesh. For by virtue of this love and this desire, it instinctively recoils in fear and dread from touching even the fringe of the impurity of idolatry, heaven forbid, which denies the faith in one God, even where such contact involves only its outer garments, namely speech and act, without any faith whatever in his heart, even if it doesn't reflect the truth. He's afraid to even touch the fringe of it, of idolatry, even as an external act. He won't do it. That's how strong Chochmah Shebenefesh is, the essence, because that's never in exile. That's just asleep. You wake it up. How do you wake it up? The Christian wakes it up, or the idol worship wakes it up when you put it to the test of faith, as I explained. And when you wake it up, and nothing can get into that person's life. Anything that smells anti-God is banished and gone. Nothing can get in. Even in your mouth, your lip service alone, it won't happen. It's an amazing phenomenon if you think about it. That's the fear included. He's so fearful to touch anything that can can represent his denial of God. It won't happen.
So it's part of the inheritance.
It's part of
a
the
trait.
inheritance. Absolutely. That's what we got from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Its source is in Chochmah of Atzilus, Chochmah of Atzilus, and it's the drive of this love is to totally nullify itself out of existence, to become one with Hashem. And that's where a Jew gets his ability to sacrifice his life. Even a non-idealistic Jew. Because when Chochmah wakes up, he's incapable of denying it. Even as an external gesture, lip service, or an act that doesn't represent the inside. But you have to be aware of your neshama for that to happen, to work. If you're not aware, then it's not going to work.
And that's part of the covenant that God has with Abraham.
He told Abraham, your children, descendants for all time will receive this.
So all starts from there?
Yeah.
Anything prior to Abraham?
What? Not prior to Abraham, no. No. Before Abraham, there wasn't such a thing.
But they have people in the Bible that they love God with that love. Prior to Abraham, they had like Enoch, people that they were very...
Yeah, they had a special soul, but it didn't go over to their children automatically. By Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, when he saw their total devotion, that they became the chariot of God, if you remember we explained in the beginning of chapter 18. Then Hashem told them, from now on, your children forever will have this spark within them, this neshama that comes from Chochmah of Atzilus, and has within it the essence of the light of the Ein Sof, which therefore allows it to become null and void in that light and give up that life, and that's what dictates the Jew. That's what dictates the Jew's life when the Chochmah is up and running. When the Chochmah is asleep, it is what it is. But when you wake it up, and this wakes it up, when the fire is burning, it wakes it up. When you test its faith itself, when you're putting him to the test of faith, that a Jew is unable to do. Yashikoyach, everyone. I'm already feeling better.